This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek. And the struggle in Brazil, the recent election, and the danger of a coup by Bolsonaro, similar to the attempted coup and insurrection in the United States, raises serious questions, not only for the working class and people of Brazil, but also the lessons from the United States with the growing rise of fascism. And joining us today is Fabio Bosco. He is a transit worker and a member of Conlutas, which is an independent trade union federation, and has been involved in struggle for workers' candidates in the Brazilian election. So welcome to Workweek, Fabio.
Thank you for the invitation, Steve. I'm glad to be here with you.
So why don't we talk about what is going on in Brazil? Because like the United States, there was a pandemic in which many people died, growing anger. There's a social crisis, there's an economic crisis in Brazil, as there is in the United States. So maybe you can talk about the background of this recent election and the conditions.
We had national elections last Sunday, and the background is exactly what you described. It's a combination of an economic crisis. The pandemic left the Brazilian working class in a very difficult situation because high unemployment and the new jobs that are emerging, let's say, are very low quality jobs. So today the official figures show that 33 million Brazilians do not have enough food to eat every day. So it's a tragedy. And this tragedy always brings a kind of discredit on the traditional political parties. You know, Steve, the ones that have been ruling the country for the last 30, 40 years with liberal policies that attack the workers' rights, the working class living conditions. And so there is a lot of discredit. And this situation altogether is bringing a kind of polarization, you see. On the one side, the far right occupies the space of the traditional bourgeois right-wing parties, and they build a basis, you see. And it's a basis, a very problematic basis, because they put together sections, for instance, sections of the capitalists that are destroying the Amazon, loggers, mining industry, agribusiness, and together with them, they have a section in the army with generals, among the policemen, the police forces, ultra-conservative Christians, even the militias. It's a kind of mafia that there is in Rio de Janeiro in the poor areas. These all together become a basis, you see, for this far-right unity around our president, Bolsonaro. And on the other side of the polarization, in the case of Brazil, we have a reformist, social democrat, a candidate Lula da Silva, that has been the most important working class leader Brazil has ever had, but he changed completely his politics 30 years ago. And he made an alliance with the capitalists and the right-wing politicians. You see, his candidate for vice president is the former governor of Sao Paulo, who is a right-wing bourgeois politician. So he built this alliance, and there is a huge polarization in Brazil. At this moment, what I can tell you is that probably Lula will win the elections, probably, because he just needs 1.5% votes more to win in the runoff, which will be held on October the 30th. But Bolsonaro and his group, let's say, they will remain, you see. They may lose the elections, but they are strong enough. They built themselves in the last 4 years, and they are a threat for the working class, you see. just to say something else, Steve, that I think it's important, Lula administration will be also an enemy of the working class, you see? So they will carry out reforms against labor rights, against social rights, for sure. And we will have to fight back. On the other side, we will have to develop self-defense against these Bolsonaro groups, you see? Because they may be an alternative for the capitalists to attack the working class and prevent the working class from uniting and standing up.
And maybe you can talk about, the role of the unions, because could the Union Federation is supporting Lula, and as you say, that the fascist and the forces around Bolsonaro are not going to go away. Even if they lose the election, they're going to step up the attack, and maybe terrorist attacks on unions, on working class communities, on immigrants, on indigenous people in Brazil. So it seems like it's a massive intensification, whatever happens in the election.
Yes, you are definitely right. And the point is that the majority of the labor movement, they are supporting Lula. And unfortunately, they have a very good excuse to remain supporting Lula administration if Lula wins, of course, because they will always point to the far right and say, look, we must keep this government to stop the far right. But the government will not do anything to stop the far right. Why? Because for the capitalists, at this moment, Steve, the capitalists prefer an administration like Lula because he can play a kind of preemptive role in stopping the working class struggles, you see? But just in case he cannot control these struggles, then the capitalists, they have a second card, you see, which are these far-right groups that are organized, they are scattered across the nation, and if the capitalists need, I'm sure they will hire these guys to attack the working class. So I see that on the one side, of course, it's important to defeat Bolsonaro in the elections now, okay? But the working class must know that Lula administration will be the one in charge of taking our rights away. We'll have to challenge the new administration. And at the same time, we'll have to prepare ourselves, the unions will have to prepare self-defense tactics in order to stop the far right.
And when you talk about self-defense tactics, what does that mean? Because in the United States, the unions, the AFL-CIO, prevented a resolution even being discussed on the issue of a general strike against an attempted coup and insurrection. And the leadership of the AFL-CIO have said that the main way that we're going to fight fascism is to elect the Democrats. That's what's going to solve and defend the working class. How do you see organizing in the working class in Brazil to defend workers and communities under attack by fascists and right-wingers?
You see, Steve, the self-defense has many different aspects. The first one is to prepare the poor neighborhood or the unions, you see, prepare them to be for any kind of action that comes from the far right. It means, first of all, to develop all means we can develop in order to carry out this self-defense. There is some kind of training for self-defense, but essentially groups, you see, we need to have groups that specialize themselves in protecting the demonstrations, protecting the picket lines, protecting the poor communities, and because otherwise we'll be an easy prey for the far right. You see, Now, how it will develop, there are some experiences in Brazil, particularly among the homeless people. When they occupy a land, they prepare, they guard the area, you see. The people, volunteers, they make one entrance, people all the time in this entrance, controlling who is in, who is out. This is one aspect of self-defense. When an occupation of homeless people in São José dos Campos, the police wanted to take them away, there was a kind of, how can I say, military training among volunteers in order to stop the police from taking them away. So there are some experience, but they are not enough. We'll have to develop much more. And I feel that the working class has an instinct as a class. And when they are under attack, they will carry out these tasks related to self-defense very quickly, quickly and deeply.
And one of the experiences of the Lula government, his government, the last government, was that he actually was involved in privatizing the Petrobras, the oil industry. He was involved in attacking corruption. There were many corrupt people that were involved in that, getting money. Do you see that continuing when if he wins the election?
Sure. Look, it's a liberal administration, or new liberal if you prefer. So they facilitated privatizations, the attacks on labor rights. You see, Steve, in the last administration of Lula da Silva, what happened? He put the bankers taking care of the economy ministry. You see, he put the landowners taking care of agriculture ministry, and so on. You see, and the corrupt politicians taking care of kind of, they call it municipalities ministry. It's something related to development and social assistance. So it's a government in partnership with the big capitalists, not small capitalists, the big capitalists, and he's promising the same. But the wording is nice because he talks about social peace. You see, we must stop hate because Bolsonaro is hate. But look, the working class hate the big capitalists. We must just select, you see, what kind of, how can I say, energy we should support and what kind we should oppose. But the working class hate towards the rich and the corrupt bourgeois politicians, it's something that definitely is positive in the development of the consciousness of the working class.
This class hatred is growing, obviously, in the United States as well. The billionaires, multi-billionaires are growing, and the middle class is getting wiped out, and workers are faced with a dire situation of survival with inflation now. And is there a political party? Is there the development of a working class, a militant working class struggle party in Brazil? What potential is there towards that?
Let me tell you, Steve, this experience of a Labor Party was developed in the 80s. In the end of the military dictatorship, there was an openness for the legalization of political parties. And much of the labor movement, left-wing organizations, students, progressive intellectuals, all these people together with a section of people of the Catholic Church that was the liberation theology people, this altogether built the Workers' Party. And it was, in the beginning, it was a very important experience because it separates the working class from the bourgeois parties. You see? Because I see we have a problem in the United States, which is the Democrats and the Republicans, both of them are bourgeois parties, and we should develop an alternative. So in Brazil, this experience was done, but the problem that we have today is that this Labour Party becomes something like the Labour Party we have in Britain. You see, so it's a Labour Party that is controlled by the bourgeois interests. It's no longer a Labour Party that represents the interests, the program, the needs of the working class. So now we have to overcome, you see, and there are some experiences here. I myself, I'm involved in one of these experiences, which is to develop a revolutionary socialist party. We managed to get to have legal rights, so we stand in the elections. And so I feel that in this moment in Brazil, the idea of having a new Labour Party is something that you don't have the political space for that, because it's occupied by the Workers' Party, which is the largest party in the country. And an experience has been developed along the last 40 years, you see. So I think that it's necessary to have working class independent parties, you see, because we must separate the working class from the bourgeoisie. But at the same time, it's important to learn from the experiences with the reformist leaders and develop a working class revolutionary leadership for the struggles that are coming, you see, for the future. This kind of revolutionary organization that may lead the working class towards power, you see. And you know, Steve, outside power, everything is illusion, you see. The working class must fight for the power. And that's the only way they can keep all their jobs, they can keep their living conditions. Otherwise, capitalism is in decay, and it puts the working class across the world in a situation that is worsening all the time. So I agree with you that it's necessary to have a working class party, and we have to see in each country what should be the best way to develop this experience, which I believe that we should prefer to fight for a kind of revolutionary leadership.
And in this last election, Bernie Sanders said that he was very concerned about a military coup by Bolsonaro, like was attempted here, an insurrection. Also, Biden apparently made a statement saying he would oppose a military coup. Maybe you can talk about the role of the United States in Brazil, because there was a military coup supported by not only the United States government, but the AFL-CIO. What was that about?
Yes, no, that's what happened in 1964. The US and other American institutions like the AFL-CIO, they prepared a coup d'etat in Brazil. They prepared for at least 2 years, and they managed, they succeeded, and there was a coup d'etat. They bring some leaders from the army, from the bourgeoisie, important politicians, and prepared the coup d'etat. At this moment, the politics of the US, which are very, very influential in Brazil, you see, very influential, they are not in favor of a coup d'etat now. That's the problem that Bolsonaro has. Because Bolsonaro, his idea of government is a military dictatorship. He wants to go back to the times of the military power. But he does not have the support of the main capitalists and he does not have the support from US imperialism. So it's difficult to do it without this support. But at this moment, US imperialism and the big Brazilian capitalists do not support a coup d'etat. But if the working class take the streets and start some kind of uprising, I'm sure that these same people, US imperialism and the Brazilian big capitalists, will ask Bolsonaro and these far-right organizations around him to stop, to prevent any kind of change that may undermine their interests. So at this moment, Bolsonaro wants, but he does not have all the support he needs to develop it. So he can try, but it's difficult to be a successful coup d'etat. But in other times, maybe he'll have all the support and it will be a big problem. It will be very problematic for the working class.
And Brazil has been continuing to trade with China, and China has investments in Brazil. The United States is involved in supporting military weapons to Ukraine, major military intervention in Ukraine, and getting other European capitalist countries to do the same. The war, what has been the effect of the Ukraine war on Ukraine? And there are some that argue that we have to support the global South against US, that kind of orientation, in order to support China against the United States, China and Russia against the United States. What has been the effect of the war in Ukraine and the political situation in Brazil in relationship to that?
You see, Steve, the Labor Federation I'm part of, CSP Conlutas, we join other labor federations in other countries to carry out a working class aid towards the working class in Ukraine. So we sent 2 convoys, one in May and another one last week. And what I can tell you is that from our experience there, you see, in Ukraine, these weapons from America and from Europe, look, they arrive in, how can I say, when you listen to Biden, he said, no, we are going to put, I don't know what amount of money in new weapons. I think 99% of these weapons are to rearm NATO, you see, because they are not arriving in Ukraine. In Ukraine, there are 700,000 workers in the army. You see, they have now a very big army, but and the Russians are much less. And this army, the Ukrainian army, is a very motivated army because they are defending their families, their houses, their country. And the Russians, it's the opposite. It's the guys that go to the war to make $50 per day. So they don't have the same motivation to go to the war. And you see these days how the Russian people, they are fleeing from the draft to go to the war in Ukraine. So I think that this it's something important to tell the working class across the world, is that despite of these very strong promises coming from the European Union and from the US administration, the weapons that are arriving in Ukraine are completely insufficient to stop the Russians and drive away the Russian army. I think that for the imperialist bourgeoisie, it's not in their interest to put down Putin, you see, because if Ukraine wins the war, Putin regime will go down. And if Putin regime will go down, it will bring a situation in Russia, in Chechen, in Kazakhstan, in Georgia, in all the area. It will come a kind of revolutionary situation. And who can defend the interests of imperialism there? if not Putin. So what I feel is that this talk about weapons in reality is a talk that is bringing much more weapons to NATO to rearm and not to deliver to the Ukrainian. So only a small amount of these weapons are going to Ukraine. That's the truth. That's the truth. And the effects of the war of Putin against Ukraine in Brazil, what happened? There is a problem here with oil, you see, because the price of oil went up. And so Bolsonaro, what he's doing, he's cutting some taxes on oil so that the price does not go up a lot. It's very high, but it does not go much more. And Lula, he proposes to take part of the profits of the Brazilian oil company, Petrobras, to lower the price of oil for the people. So they are essentially with this kind of proposals towards the main issue that's affecting Brazil. Brazil is not much affected by for instance, heating, you see, because here in Brazil, the price of energy is high also, but the energy comes from the rivers. You see, it's hydroelectric energy, which is not affected by this, by the war on Ukraine. So the main effect is this. There is another effect, which is the inflation of food, not because Brazil imports, Brazil exports, but today the prices of these commodities are internationalized. So if the price go up in the market, in American markets, the price go up here in Brazil, despite of the fact the costs to produce them are the same. So the big corporations, they are benefiting a lot from this war in Ukraine. And the Brazilians are suffering. See, inflation and the price of oil is always very high.
And the issue of internationalism, workers linking up with Ukrainian workers, with Russian workers, with Chinese workers, it seems that is a perspective that needs to be developed, because the same working class globally are facing the same conditions and attacks in the face of an economy, a world economy, which is threatening not only with massive inflation, but the default of poor countries like Turkey, like other countries that are in debt to the United States in euro, or have to pay back their loans in euros, and that kind of thing. This collapse of these economies creates a horrendous situation for the working class. What is the solution for the working class in this dire world economic crisis?
I think that, to be brief, I think that it's necessary an international socialist perspective for all the world, you see, Steve. And when I'm talking about socialism, I'm not talking about these administrations that we have in China or Cuba or Russia today, because there is a lot of confusion. These administrations are capitalist administration. I'm talking about a working class socialism, you see. I think that the only solution is to reorganize the world economy around socialist basis under the working class control. This may bring to the working class all the benefits of the new technologies, you see, because today it's the opposite. The capitalist system everywhere, including in the US, the situation of the working class is getting worse. So capitalism cannot offer any solution for the working class. So I think that the only perspective that we can work on is to build the international solidarity among the working class, for sure, you see, because the capitalists are organized internationally, you see, and we need to organize the working class internationally as well to stand up and fight back, and to fight for a socialist world, and a socialist that with workers' democracy, You see, the experience that we had in Russia under Stalin, or in Cuba under Castro, or in China under Mao Zedong and up to our days, of a kind of totalitarian socialism, this is not a solution. This is not a solution, because this bureaucracy that takes the power without workers' democracy, after some time, they will try to become a new bourgeoisie. That's what happened in China, you see. The Chinese bourgeoisie, many of them were members of the elite of the Communist Party. The same thing happened in Russia. These Russian oligarchs, many of them came from the Communist Party. So I believe that we must talk with the working class strategically about the need for internationalism, the need for socialism, and the need for workers' democracy. I think this combination will bring a solution, will offer a perspective for the working class internationally.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Fabio Bosco. He's with Conlutas, and he's been reporting on the growing class struggle in Brazil, the elections, and what the working class is facing, regardless of who wins the next election. So thanks for joining us on Workweek.
Thank you for having me, Steve.